Welcome Wargamers, Doug here with some more Age of Sigmar news for you, reading off from the Warhammer community site. Today, we have a little bit of a preview for the new Idoneth Deepkin Battletome. Very excited about this book. It's a faction that I think has needed some love pretty much since the first one launched. It immediately came out and a bunch of people were scratching their heads regarding the internal balance of the book. And I touched on my thoughts on the Battletome as it is and sort of what I want from it in a video kind of discussing the roadmap as a whole. So we know that we have Fyreslayers, Deepkin, Daughters of Cain, and Nighthaunt. So let's dig into this article. It's called The New Idoneth Battletome Brings Extra Beefy Leviathans to the Battle Line. Capital B on Battle Line there. Very interesting. So we'll start off with the article. We unfurled the Age of Sigmar roadmap at the end of January, showcasing a whole slate of upcoming Battletomes, with the hot-tempered Fyreslayers, the deadly Daughters of Cain, and the spectral Nighthaunt all poised to receive new rules. There's an awful lot to look forward to this year, and even more to come. Top of the list are the Idoneth Deepkin. So let's dive deep into this briny book and tide you over with some awesome new rules. I love it. Achillean Leviathans are amongst the greatest bond beasts tamed by the Idoneth. They're absolutely huge, they hit like a fleet of trucks, and best of all, they're adorable murder turtles. Who could ask for more? Pause. Nobody. They're awesome. I love Leviathans. I think they're the coolest model in the entire faction, to be honest with you. We could, apparently, because they're set to be get even better in the new Battletome Idoneth Deepkin. Nochular is a moving city built atop a vast sea beast, a living situation that gives these nomadic Eidnith a great appreciation for the Titan of the depths. If your army belongs to the Nochular Enclave, so like their subfaction, Stormhost, Temple, whatever you want to call it, you'll be able to field Achillean Leviathans as battle line units, because the only thing better than one Leviathan is a whole bale of them. It's a very cool new way to build an army. In fact, an enterprising soul raid could cram as many of 3 of these in a not-so-gentle giants into a 2,000 point list. So we'll pause there. I like the fact that they're making things battle line dependent on your subfaction. I like that. If it was a blanket rule, I'd be like, oh god. But the fact that it's Nochular, it makes perfect theme sense. They really are sort of like the faction of beasts and that kind of thing. I think that's a cool move. I mean, this is no different from, like, technically you can field nothing but giant monsters in Seraphon, you can do tanks in Cities of Sigmar. I've said it before, I'll say it again. If you have some of these large kits or anything that resembles cavalry, it needs to be able to be taken as battle line because somebody's going to want to build that army for sure. Okay, back to the article. As if that wasn't enough, the Nochular Allegiance ability, the aptly named Crushing Assault, oh god, offers even more power to their half-shelled Goliaths, with an exclusive Monstrous Rampage that pushes both their massive scythe fins and crushing jaws to rend -3. Okay, dang. And then it actually has the picture here, Nochular Allegiance ability, Crushing Assault. You can carry out this Monstrous Rampage with a friendly Nochular Leviathan instead of any other Monstrous Rampage you can carry out with that Leviathan. If you do so, change the rend characteristic of the Leviathan's massive scythe, fins, and crushing jaws to -3 until the end of the next combat phase. Remember, Monstrous Rampages happen at the end of the charge phase, so you have a chance to move him up, and then you can assess the situation, right? He makes the charge, hopefully, or depending on where he is at the end of the charge phase, he could already be in combat, and you have a choice to make there. And I like adding Monstrous Rampage abilities and heroic actions because they just give you more tools in the toolbox. Like, maybe with whatever he's engaged with, he doesn't need -3 rend, right? If he gets swamped by a bunch of grots, it's probably better that they can't take orders and you just try to battle shock him away, kind of a thing. All I'm saying is it's good utility. It just adds a lot to him. And it's a choice, because you're not inherently paying for it. You know, it's just a sub-faction. You can just take the rule or not, and you can choose to use it or not, but it gives them a chance to be exceptionally scary. Okay, back to the article. This ability makes the Leviathan truly a turtle for all seasons. Munch through enemy hordes using its crushing charge before taking huge bites out of monsters and heroes by boosting its rend with crushing assault. These champions can land over 20 damage in a single round of attacks, and that's even before the elves on their backs get involved. Leviathans aren't alone on the Nautilar battle lines, of course. Your faithful Namarti thralls are ready for guidance from the new Achelian Thrallmaster, and if your general is an Achelian king, you can even back them up with battle line Achelian guards. That's fine, that's nothing new there. And this versatile core allows your army to adapt to any situation, being holding objectives or slaying enemies. And then they're kind of a little teaser here to sign up for their newsletter. So I'm going to pop a picture out and let's just chat for a bit. So it's time for my new favorite segment of this channel that didn't exist before today, and that is Turtle Talk. Leviathans have always been a super cool unit. I mean, they were kind of not the best when the book first dropped, but they got a new war scroll with some of the Broken Realm supplements, and they're just fun. The amount of damage that they can do. They have this idea, if you're not familiar with it, where they start with like a 2-up save, and the save actually degrades as they take damage, which is sort of unique amongst them. Most monsters and stuff like that, the actual save value doesn't degrade over time, but theirs does. And I like that. In fact, I think that is awesome, befitting, you know, a living battering ram type of creature. I'd love to see like the rogue idol get the same thing. On its back, we got some harpoon guns, we got a guy with a trident, all these kinds of cool things that are happening. I really do hope that those weapons on its back have a meaningful use. So for example, like on the Alapex, the shark, they have a net launcher that can tie down people and stop you from piling in. I want these guys to have some cool thing with their guns too, because let's be honest, I'm not looking for damage, right? The damage comes from the turtle. I want the gun to do cool things that are more control style than outright damage. Being a monster, like we talked about before, I love the fact that it has choices in what it wants to do. You can send it in and have it be more defensive, you know, and try to like curtail large units by picking out the edges of them so they can't fully pile in. Again, you could also go full murder machine, and if you are playing them in the sub-faction that gives you -3 rend as an action, yeah, do that. Do that Rampage action. Heck yeah, dude. These kind of models are some of my favorites because they really play to the way that I play games, which is I just put people on tilt. If you're not familiar with that idea, it's when you line something up across your opponent that they just don't necessarily know how to deal with. And I love that stuff. I eat it up. Because I'm not terribly like good at this game, but if I can make my opponent not sure of what is target priority or how to address something like, say, 3 Leviathans with a 2-up save marching down the board, you know, and that's the war scroll they have now. I assume it will change, so that might be inaccurate in the future. But that kind of idea of like, how do I deal with X? And when you have these massive battering rams that can pile in, and if you are taking them in that sub-faction, you will have access to the -3 rend Rampage. That is just a nasty proposition. Like, you're asking for an immense amount of weight of dice if you take a horde army that doesn't have amazing mortal wound or whatever abilities. Combine this with the fact that right now, as far as we know with the Deepkin book, they still have that rule that you have to shoot the nearest model kind of a thing. Can you imagine 3 of these suckers and then like a unit of 10 Namarti thralls in front of them, so you have to shoot the thralls? Like, you don't even get the choice. I don't know. I don't know if that rule's going to stay, but it's a cool idea anyway. I think in total, this makes the Deepkin much more interesting because, you know, there's a lot of discussion about like, well, as of currently, going all in on eels is kind of like the real way to play the faction. Of course, you can play with anything you want, but in terms of a competitive level of what's most effective and won't just immediately get wiped off the board, you're going to want to go eels. But in this situation, it's like, nah, man, the Achelian Leviathans, I think when they were designed, this is an anchor in the army, right? When you plant one of these guys on an objective, it doesn't go anywhere. Everybody else is a little elf that just kind of runs around and swims and that kind of stuff and gets, you know, thralls and reavers get taken off the board very, very easily if they're not on the aggressive. So like, this gives you a nice anchor point. Move them up onto an objective so your opponent can't cap it. Then you support it, meaning you bring some other units or heroes onto that objective as well. And then the next turn you rush forward and this thing acts as a giant battering ram straight up your opponent's nose. That's the kind of like combined stuff that I wanted to see from this faction, and I really hope it's making a return. Because as the biggest model in this army, I mean, and I guess it's kind of tied with the Eidolons. I guess when I think of big models in general, they need to have as much thematic board presence as they do physical board presence. So like, for example, if this guy is huge, if you have not seen the model, I love him. And because he's so huge, he needs to act in a big boss kind of way. Like, I expect cool things from him, and with the new War Scroll, I've only played against it once, I think. Does not disappoint. Chewing through that much armor is just a pain in the butt. And I'm so excited to see that hopefully get magnified in the new book. I want the Deepkin to be so much more than they are. I want to see Thralls and Leviathans so much more than Eels. Not that Eels are bad. Eels are awesome. It's just we've seen a lot of them since the book launched, right? I mean, so it's less that I'm poo-pooing Eels. You shouldn't feel bad for playing them. It's more just that I'm excited to see a whole bunch of new options and a refresh. So anyway, friends, those are my thoughts. I would love to see ways of, if there was a sub-faction, I bring this up before, but in Broken Realms, there was a way, like a sub-faction for Slaves to Darkness, where you could take a chariot and it gave you the appropriate keywords to make them a hero. I would love something like that for the Leviathan. Like, if I could have an Achillean lord on a Leviathan, can you imagine how cool that would be? Oh, I would just die. That's so cool. But friends, I want to hear your thoughts. Leave in the comments down below, what do you think of the most recent changes? It's a bit limited in scope because it is talking specifically about one sub-faction that allows you to get that Monstrous Rampage as well as, Leviathans' battle line. But honestly, even if you only took one of them, it still accounts for a third of your battle line requirements, and it's a model that you want to bring because he's nasty. So I'm down with that. Remember, just because you get a rule doesn't mean you have to abuse it to the max. You can totally be, is it Lotmar, what they are? The sub-faction, and then just take one. And it's still super BA because of that Monstrous Rampage. Personally, I'd say 2, so you can at least divide the threats across the board for your opponent, make them pull in 2 different directions, but that's just my thoughts as of right now without full context of the book. But let me know your thoughts in the comments down below, and I will chat with you there. Thank you so much for watching and listening, and I'll catch you in my next news video. Happy wargaming.